The name's Cortland, but you can call me Court. You may not can tell, but I'm definitely a nerd. If you missed the first part of Growing Up Nerd, I'll have it pinned in the description below, but to help this reach nerds across the world, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. So, picking back up where we left off. The struggles of being a nerd in the 90s, I'd say, was an interesting one. This was a time where, like I said before, people just threw that word nerd around. Anything that wasn't considered cool or popular, people just threw it into that nerdy category. And this people did with me as well. I was short. As I mentioned before, I wore the biggest glasses. And while other black kids at my age were playing sports like basketball or football, even baseball, I was getting ready to go to karate class. I enjoyed greatly karate because I was around other boys with similar interests, and having no father or male at home, I saw my sensei as very much a needed male role model. I would go to school and talk to my friends excited that I learned my kicks, my punches, form, and technique. But again, these kids were already obsessed with sports, so many of my peers would just hear my passion for martial arts and again place me in the nerdy category for simply enjoying karate. It bothered me, yes, but sports to me were kind of dumb, so if I was a nerd for enjoying karate, in my brain they were dumb for wasting their time on sports. At least that's what I told myself. Each lesson at the dojo was geared towards teaching discipline and positioning. I was being taught how to handle myself in a fight, but being told not to fight. Being taught that violence is unnecessary in most cases, and if you can, if possible, avoid that at all costs. But if it can't be avoided and one must fight, use discipline and positioning to better direct your violence, and also learn and show self-restraint. This was my conflict with participating in organized sports growing up. Parents signed their boys up in sports because they knew this would help them get out any pent-up energy, and I think a good bit of coaches only really taught boys that it was okay to be angry and just use that anger as a source of energy and motivation to help you beat the other guy. But I didn't care about beating people or anything in particular like that. Remember, I'm a nerd, so by definition, people saw me as a loser already, and I hated being called a loser. So knowing how it felt, I didn't want to be the one that caused any other kid to feel like a loser either. Now, this isn't me saying that I don't ever have any type of competitive drive in me, because I definitely can get very competitive, and even in sports, given the right circumstances and activity. But I prefer to compete in areas like knowledge of the world, things that you can't directly learn in school, video games, and various types of puzzles or brain teasers activities. That's really what I prefer to compete on. I think nerds just tend to think differently when it comes to competition. We compare intellect over feats of muscle and athleticism, but anybody can be fast or strong, right? But how strong is your brain? And how fast is your thought processing? These are some of the things that I cared about. And I think 90s television really presented nerds in a very interesting light. And what I mean by that really is 90s television nerds, we really were just one thing, one-dimensional, and they played into all of the stereotypes imaginable. And this is, from how they were presented, their attire, how they even communicated. Most nerds had a real squeaky high voice like this. And that's not how really people talk, right? Or just, them being obsessed with, all things sciencey and just sci-fi. Like that's just, that's all we really cared about, right? And I look at examples like Steve Urkel from Family Matters, or even Carlton Banks from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Nerds, were only ever seen as a source of comic relief, right? And as a supplement to the typically cooler main character of the show, just to really and really just to help them look or maybe be cooler on screen, right? Kids saw this portrayed on TV, and that's what they emulated in their social circles at school and on the playground. I mentioned it in my last video about that internal conflict I had as a kid nerd, and this is definitely part of it. I saw nerds on TV growing up, so to me, I grew up thinking nerdiness could find a space in the world. But at the same time, nerds either had to just happily play second fiddle to the cool guy, or they had to conform to what everybody else thought and said and did that was deemed cool. And that's either to get the girl or not to get bullied or simply just to fit in. And in my brain, these weren't really good reasons to lessen myself, my nerdiness, if you will, and worry about being cool. But again, this conflict here is, again, because nerds just genuinely don't fit in. That's part of our thing, if you will. So, to my fellow nerdies out there, what was childhood like for you? What subjects were you interested in, and that others maybe considered nerdy? Two of the biggest areas I can think of immediately is this current mainstream obsession with superheroes and anime and manga. Fascination with these topics instantly made you a nerd of the highest degree as a kid. So why and when did everybody just start liking them all of a sudden? When did that become popular and cool? Most elements of these topics haven't changed much since I was a kid. So, again, if it was nerdy then, why is it cool now? We'll discuss that more in next week's entry of Growing Up Nerd. So if you're liking what you're hearing, make sure you make sure you leave a comment and subscribe. And to my fellow nerdies out there, keep nerding on.